Hi, and welcome back to Forehead Corner. Listen, my whole thing is, how many more decades are we going to try not voting or voting third party for a candidate we know can't win? How many more decades are we going to try that before we say we need a new strategy?
Okay, hey, Martha, one, Fab Foreheads unite, but two, I am right there with you. It's so frustrating to see people who are incensed that we don't have a functional third party in this country or fourth party in this country, but all they do is vote third party once every 4 years in a presidential election, as if that is going to magically constitute a functional third party. In fact, it is the epitome of magical thinking to show up and vote for a third-party candidate, a protest vote, once every 4 years, and think that that candidate will ever get, 5% of the vote, much less actually get elected. If you want your party to have power, you have to start locally. All power is built from the local level because power resides with the people. This is the basis for successful grassroots organizing. This is the basis for a successful movement that will resist and topple an authoritarian regime. And likewise, it is the basis for building a functional third or fourth party in the US. But people don't seem to want to do that work because it's hard work and it takes decades. We see the Working Families Party, we see the DSA understanding how long it takes, and then they're working on that local level. Here in Portland, we have, 4 members of our city council now who are DSA. We have a DSA mayor of New York and of Seattle. That's because the DSA has spent literal decades working in local communities to build a voter base, to make sure that they are putting forth a platform that represents the needs of the people in their community, and then they are running candidates on a local level who can get elected by that voter base. But even so, how many viable third-party candidates are running for the House or the Senate in the midterms this year? We have this big chunk of third-party voters, and I'm not saying that it's everybody, but they show up once every 4 years and they act really smug and self-righteous because they're like, I can't stomach the Republican or the corporate establishment Democrat. And believe me, I understand, but we have an entrenched two-party system, and you have done none of the work in the intervening years to build a viable third party with a solid voter base. Because what? Power resides with the people. You have to have the people invested in the party and invested in the candidate. You have to have built that party out. Unless we are seeing people on local and state level all around the country who are getting elected for that third party, it's a pipe dream to pretend that we are going to magically get a third-party candidate elected as president. And whenever I talk about this, I get other leftists in my comments who will call me liberal shill, you must work for the DNC. No, I'm just pragmatic and I understand how our system works. I am working with the pieces that are on the board, not the pieces that I wish were on the board. I am playing in reality, not in a fantasy land. I vote for DSA candidates and Working Families Party candidates when they are on my ballot on a local level. I think we need 3, 4, 5 parties in the US. I think we would be far more resilient, far more stable as a democracy. And also we would have to learn how to compromise. We wouldn't have this division in the House and the Senate. If we had more than 2 parties, we would have to learn how to form coalitions, how to compromise, how to have a functional government. By we, I mean our representatives. And to your second point,
because I think people underestimate what it takes to cause a revolution, like the logic that we have to let things get so bad that then there will be a revolution that will result in a better society. I think things would have to be way worse than they have ever been for way more people in this country for that to happen.
Yep, I agree with you on this point as well. And it's more than that. We know that when we have tremendous instability, when a government ceases to be functional, falls apart, or a would-be autocrat attempts to cement power and it doesn't go well, that there actually is a high likelihood that that country will fall into cycles of dictators, coups and dictators over and over again. And that's part of the reason that when I talk about the resistance work that we're engaged in now, we have to not just be a party of no against fascism, against the Trump regime. We have to envision what kind of country we want going forward. A key component of effective resistance is that building alternatives. The government is doing all of these terrible things. We are building alternative structures, not only to help support all of us right now and to help us survive this period in history, but also because That's the framework for what we want as a nation going forward. It's entirely a fiction. It's pure fantasy to believe that if American democracy fails, what will automatically come afterward is some kind of communist utopia. Nope. When there is a power vacuum like that, we know that a strong man tends to come in and try and grab power. However, when there is a mass movement of the people engaged in nonviolent civil resistance, people who are pro-democracy, people who are envisioning a better future, what kinds of supports and structures we should have, what kind of reforms we need, that's the kind of resistance movement, revolutionary movement, that will result in democracy going forward, in a stable government going forward, in human rights going forward. And before and during the election, and for way back when, I have been frustrated with fellow leftists who act like the way out of this capitalistic hellscape that we're in. I am a staunch anti-capitalist. The way out of this capitalistic hellscape that we're in is just to let everything collapse. And for me, I see those people as being entirely privileged and entirely naive, right? Or selfish, because in a revolution like that, you end up with disabled people who are thrown under the tank treads. You end up with children thrown under the tank treads. You end up with the poorest Americans thrown under the tank treads. The most vulnerable in our society. When a society collapses, we already are looking at Donald Trump's America and the way that so many safety nets have been withdrawn. If the whole system collapses, we don't have sufficient mutual aid networks for all of those tankies or whoever to care for all of the folks who need those supports, who need those social safety nets. In that kind of apocalyptic fantasy of burn it all down and then we'll build something from the ashes, it is the most vulnerable in society who will be sacrificed to that model. And we're not going to come out of it with human rights for everybody. We're not going to come out of it with a functional system. In permaculture, we always talk about retrofitting, how it is far more resource heavy. It's far more expensive to throw something away and buy something new. It's much quicker, more efficient, conserves resources, reduces harm to say, how can I take an existing element of my permaculture system and make adjustments to it, make alterations to it, add on additional features to it, or strip off elements that are broken and not working, versus throwing the whole thing away and buying something new. And that analogy, I think, is incredibly applicable to the United States government and to our society as a whole. I'm not saying there aren't parts of our society that should be jettisoned, right? When we look at retrofitting an element of our design, it means that sometimes we're going to excise parts. Sometimes we are going to make significant changes. But we have a framework of democracy. It has always privileged wealthy white men. Okay, does that mean we should jettison the entire system of democracy? No. What it means is that we need to take away those elements that were empowering white men to exploit powerful white men, wealthy white men, the Epstein class to exploit the system. And instead create guardrails, bring about significant reforms so that the system actually does what it is intended to do, which is procure life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all Americans, for us, the people. I also kind of view our entrenched two-party system this way, because again, I'm working with the pieces that are on the board, not the pieces I wish were on the board, right? And so for me, that means I'm very involved in the primaries. Now, I live in a solidly blue district, and I live in a solidly blue state. That means I am in a peak position to push for and endorse and support candidates who are further and further left, to embrace the kind of reforms that we all need. Luckily, my Senator Jeff Merkley is already one of those people, so I'm not interested in supporting a primary challenger to him. But in other safely blue districts around the country, there are a lot of kind of do-nothing Democrats. There are a lot of corporate establishment types who take money from AIPAC and big crypto, who don't work to represent their constituents. That is where we look for retrofitting the Democratic Party. That's where we look for reforms. That's where we, the voter, decide that we're going to push out those corporate Democrats who are not our allies in the fight against fascism. And we're going to elect progressives who understand what is required of them, who understand that their job is to represent us and to get a country that serves our needs and gives us everything we should have had all along, but have been denied because of Citizens United, because of the Epstein class, because billionaires control the system. And so while I wish that we had 3, 4, 5 different viable parties on a national level in the United States, we don't have that yet. We're still working on building that kind of power and those coalitions locally. So instead, I'm going to use the system that we have, and I'm going to work to push it left in any way that I can. I'm going to understand that good, better, best, I can't always access best, but I can always try for better, and I definitely can go for good. Martha, at the end of your video, you said, can we come up with a way to not either have the status quo, which isn't working, or a revolution? And I think that we can, and I'd love to know what other folks think as well.